Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'll give everyone a second or two to find their metaphorical seat. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here with us. My name is Alana O'Connell. I'm part of the marketing team here at Holistiplan. We're really glad you're here. Today's conversation is all about growth, specifically what growth-minded firms do differently. Debbie will be talking about how you can better understand and respond to client needs, how comprehensive planning supports stronger long-term growth, and how consistency makes it possible to deliver that value at scale. For anyone who may not know her, Debbie Taylor is a managing partner and chief tax strategist at Carson Wealth. She leads her own wealth management practice in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, and is also one of the most respected speakers and educators in our industry. She is an incredible resource and partner to us here at Holistiplan, so if this is your first time at one of her sessions, you are very much in for a treat. We are also joined today by Holistafan and Holistapro, Greg Schulteis, a senior wealth partner at Carson Wealth, who is also very much a trusted resource and partner for us here. I do have a few quick housekeeping notes before we jump into today's session. We are recording today, and yes, we will share that recording with you. I want to point out a few of those tabs that you're seeing at the bottom of your screen. The Q&A tab is where you can send any questions you have for Debbie or Greg or myself. We'll answer as many as we can live. You can download the slides for today's session along with any bonus material under that resources tab. You'll notice that the chat feature has been disabled for now, just because this allows us to make sure we're seeing and answering all of your questions. Debbie may ask a few questions during the presentation, so we will briefly turn that chat feature on so you can answer those questions. That is all of the housekeeping notes I have. So Debbie, I will turn it over to you. We do have a tendency to kick these sessions off with a gentle roast of Greg. Is that how we are kicking things off today?
I
You know,
was
I suspected that's what was happening.
I have the roast ready. How did you know me? All right, Alana. All right, we're gonna kick in. So if we look a little confused, we were backstage, is what they're calling it. Except this version of backstage, you actually can't hear what they're saying, whereas in the real backstage, you actually can hear what they're saying. And so good to be here, everybody. So four things growth-minded firms do differently, and it all begins with tax planning, right? And so we're going to hop in. We have a great deck that Greg and I prepared today, and we're happy to share it with you. So on the next slide, that's me. So here's Greg's early roast is, Greg, I have all this stuff after my name, and you just have this smaller picture and like two little lines after your name. What is that? What is that?
It's a very boring story,
Yeah, it is.
you
It is a
know.
boring story. So we need to spruce that up for next time. So that's me roasting you. And by the way, you see I have an action shot. We got to get an action shot for you. Okay? We got to get you being like this. Okay? Some action
Okay,
shot.
yeah, excellent.
So here is my partner in crime, Greg Schultheis. And so let's go. What are we going to talk about today? So here are the four things that top performing firms do differently. And again, I'd love to hear from you in the chat because while I'm talking, maybe Greg will answer some questions or I'll see them come up and vice versa. So what are we going to talk about today? Top growing firms. What are four things that they're doing differently? They understand and meet client needs. They deliver on client needs through comprehensive planning. They embrace tax planning and they provide tax planning to all clients every year. And so those are the four areas that we're going to dig into. And so let's go. Top growing firms understand and meet client needs. So in an effort to make this interactive, we've got our first poll. Do you know what your top clients want most from you this year? And have you asked them? Which I know is weird because it's actually two questions, but you can only answer once. Okay. And so do you know what your top clients want? And have you asked them? Oh, look, we do have two questions here. That is fantastic. I normally give you about 30 seconds to answer. And usually in the first 5 seconds, I can figure out where things are going on this. And so I used to sing that little Jeopardy, do, 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 but I'm not going to do that for you now. Okay, I'm not going to do that. And so let's see where we got here. All right, it looks like we got a lot of the answers in. So yeah, we're going to end the poll. Boom, we're going to share results. And so what do we see? Do you know what your top clients want most from you this year? That is fascinating. 63% of you are out there like, yep, I got this. Got this. No need to hear from you guys, right? So that 63%, I guess you might be a little bored this first section of our webinar. I don't know. Maybe I have one or two new ideas. And have you asked them? and now the results are reversed a little bit, and 60% of you have not asked them, right? Which I do think is a bit of a miss, and we're going to talk about that. So even if 60% of you think you know what your clients, actually, Greg, this is fascinating. So 60% say they know what their top clients want, yet 60% have not asked them. So how do you know what people want if you've never asked them? How does that work, Greg? Is it like
Yeah, I'm not,
telepathic?
it
Are they
must
clairvoyant?
be
Yeah.
that maybe they asked in the past. Yeah, I don't know. We'll find
I,
out.
have
Put it
you
in the
asked
chat.
them? That refers to the past. Have you asked them refers to the past? Okay. So clearly what we've got is clairvoyant, a lot of clairvoyance going on. And I love that because that's a great skill to have. Okay. So let's hop in. And even for our listeners who are clairvoyant, hopefully we'll have a few new ideas. Okay. So why does understanding client needs matter? And this is, a whole laundry list of things. And most of them you're like, yeah, stronger client relationships, no, no, duh, right? And we're going to get into some of that data, stickier client connections, right? If you know what people want and you can give them what they want, they're going to have a tendency to stick around, right? Higher client share, larger prospects, differentiation, additional referrals, protecting your fees, blah, blah, blah. Greg, if you had to pick, and I know like all these are great reasons. If you had to pick your favorite reason why understanding what your clients' needs matter, what would you say?
Yeah, I always go with the stickiness. That's always been the thing that fascinates me the most. What can we do to keep clients, on the books for the long term? So that's what my attention always goes to.
Okay, so I'm going to just play devil's advocate here, okay? Because I had a feeling you'd say that. That's like the obvious choice, right? Yeah. I'm just going to play devil's advocate. In the industry, we have 96 to 98% retention for most firms, right? And I do think that's why some firms, are not so assertive in asking what clients need or providing additional services or maybe even digging into tax planning the way they need to dig into tax planning, right? Because retention is so high for the most part in the industry, right? So I'm going to throw out another idea. If you really understand your clients, right, and you deliver to them what they need, right, you understand what your clients need and deliver, then I think the third item here is wallet share. I think your wallet share is going to increase significantly. And it's literally then potentially the equivalent of adding new clients without adding new clients, right? Because if you've got that same client and they only got give you 500,000, but asking them what they need and delivering on it, and you can get another 500 or million or 2 million, you just tripled your revenue, your assets, and you didn't even have to add on a new client. So that's my thinking on this. What do you think, Greg?
I totally agree.
I love that.
Remove that barrier.
Yeah.
Or I should say lower the barrier to growing
Yeah.
your book.
I love that, right?
Yeah.
Because we all know that adding new clients is, a lot of work, and you have flight risk with new clients, particularly during that first 3 years, is what the data shows, right? So why not squeeze as much juice out of your existing clients? And that's what this does for you. So it is worth the effort. All right, let's go to the next slide. Making clients happy grows AUM, right? So again, we're very data driven. This is what from the Schwab benchmarking study, the most recent one. And what we see here, first of all, is that our top growing firms are growing at 8.6%. This is organic growth, okay? This is not market driven, right? Organic growth, top growing firms are at 8.6%. Sometimes you'll see like 6% as average growth, right? So these are our top firms, okay? 8.6%. All right. Um, and what you see there is that half of that, about 4%, comes from existing clients. Like think about how powerful that is. Half of that organic growth is coming from existing clients. And if you want to then grow that, how are you going to do it? Well, asking them what they need and then delivering that to them, right? Marketing. So marketing is about 3% of that almost 9%. So maybe a third of the growth comes from marketing. And here's what I'll tell you about marketing. We're doing marketing at our firm. Of course we are. It's a headache. It's a lot of work. Even if you have outside companies that are helping you, you still need somebody on your team helping to direct that, helping to create content, right? Social media, like whatever you're doing. And so, yes, like there can be about a third of it that comes from marketing, but that is a lot of work. Okay, that is a lot of work, and still does not beat out existing clients. So although marketing may be sexy, right? Oh, I'm on social media. Oh, I'm doing all this stuff. At the end of the day, the silent builder, right? The silent builder is those client referrals. Okay. And how do we do that, right? Let's improve the client experience and improve our growth. Let's look at all the other firms, right? The firms that are not growing as quickly. And what do we see? We see that their growth is half of what the top grower firms are, right? Not so great. And we still see, though, that over 50% of their growth comes from client referrals. So whether you are a slow growing firm or a fast growing firm, it's very clear that the growth engine is the client referrals. Now, I know there are exceptions. Oh, I know the CPA down the hall and he just sends me referrals all day. I get it. I know that there are exceptions, but this is data. This is the Schwab benchmarking study, which is, done very well. And you see very clearly for most of us, this is where our new business is coming from. Okay. So we wanted to include here a little summary of this great Harvard Business Review article that we reviewed as a team. And so it was an article about octopus firms versus tin man firms. And I'd never seen this concept, but I absolutely loved it. And so the left-hand side are the traditional firms, the tin man firms. And just like the tin man in The Wizard of Oz, like very rigid, ee, 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 right? Remember that? Very rigid, not really moving around so great, right? Whereas the octopus firm is nimble, knows how to pivot, right? Is smart, right? Octopus are supposed to be very smart. If you ever read any books about them, right? And they've got a lot of arms, right? They're out there, right? They're feeling, right? They're taking in data, right? And so this was actually a really great a really great article. And if you see, those tin man firms are top-down service models, standardized processes built for predictability, feedback collected but rarely acted on. I mean, I love that one, right? Because how many of us are getting surveys all the time? You go buy a car, you go to a restaurant, they're like, oh, we want to hear from you, right? And then you're like, is anyone actually going to do anything with this, right? Innovation isolated to projects or leadership initiatives. Like, I just thought that was a brilliant summary of what we see in top-down firms, right? And so the octopus, which is what we think of ourselves at Carson Wealth Franklin Lakes, client-led, feedback-driven decision-making. The teams closest to the clients are empowered to act, continuous learning, and services evolve as client needs evolve, right? It's very bottom up, right? It's very bottom up, and you're listening, right? So some of the best innovations have come from clients, have come from the field. So, for example, Greg, I'm going to ask you if you know about this. You need to be honest. And by the way, audience participation counts here so people can chime in. Did you know that the upside down Heinz ketchup bottle was an innovation from customers? Because Heinz noticed that people would put their ketchup bottle upside down because they didn't like the water coming out first. So they put it upside down, and then Heinz redesigned the ketchup bottle. Starbucks skinny drinks. Okay. That's from me. I made that one up. Okay. I should get credit for the skinny drinks. Okay. The mini Coke cans, right? Think about how much in those Coke cans goes undrank. Mini Coke cans, right? Resealable cereal bags because people complaining about cereal going stale. The Swiffer was also a customer initiative, and laundry pods that you drop into the washing machine because pouring the soap into the cup was too messy. By the way, I used to put the cup in the washing machine. I'd pour it into the cup and then I'd put the whole cup in. Okay. Think about all this innovation that comes from the clients, that comes from the customers, right? That's the type of firm that you want to be. You want to be the firm that is listening to your clients and innovating side by side with them, right? So let's thrive as an octopus organization. Sarah does the same thing with her laundry. I love that. Sarah, do you know in my house we have a division of labor? I am in charge of laundry in my house, by the way. That's what I do. But my husband does the dishes. I literally have not touched a dish, I think, in 30 years, almost 30 years of marriage. I've not touched a dish. Okay. So anyway, it's a little insight into how things work. Oh, Sarah, you find it therapeutic, the laundry or the dishes? I'm curious which one. My husband thinks the dishes part is therapeutic. All right. So let's thrive as an octopus organization. Oh, laundry. You I do I do too. All right. So let's go to the next slide. Thrive as an octopus organization, right? So let's distribute the decision making, right? Pushing the authority close to the client and the work, right? Um, but what noise does an octopus make? I mean, I don't know. I've never heard of an octopus making noise. I mean, I'm sure they make some noise when they're going around, right? But you don't really hear too much about that. But they're supposed to be very smart creatures. Um, Embedding learning into daily work. So, for example, we have a morning huddle every morning, 8:45. We have a morning huddle that lasts anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, where we review the day and we share anything, some quick postmortems, anything we need to be acting upon, right? Again, trying to be pivoting, in the field and the team getting in the same room, all of us listening, learning from each other, right? Replace control with ownership. I love that, right? We have different owners in our firm in Franklin Lakes, and they get responsibility. Make innovation everyone's job. This used to be a challenge in my firm. So many of the ideas were very top down coming from me, and one of the things that I do think we've made a lot of progress over the last couple of years is having people take ownership and having them innovate and having them comment on things that they see in the field. And Greg's been, a real great example of that is, he's doing a lot of the tax planning. He's the one in Holistiplan all day. And he's sharing ideas with me and hopefully Greg thinks I'm receptive to them. Yes, you get access to the slides afterwards. Remove friction before adding process, and lead by designing the system, right? And so let's shape environments and enable trust, clarity, and curiosity, right? There's no question that's too dangerous to ask, right? That's one of the things you learn in law school. And so it's just something for us to think about as we're all striving to be top performing firms in here for 2026, right? Okay, so what adaptive firms do differently, right? What do adaptive firms do differently? Constant feedback, they're empowering the front line, integrating learning into action, right? So that's those daily huddles. We also read typically a Harvard Business Review article every week, and somebody presents on it, and it's usually management practices or like how to keep a positive culture in your firm, how to listen better to clients, how to accept feedback. I get this Harvard Business Review blog, and it comes in every day. And the articles are short. It's like a summary of the real article. And some of it is really applicable to building a practice, right? Simplify instead of adding complexity and obsess over one question. Does this create more value for our clients, right? Customer obsessed firms are 3 times more likely to lead their industries in revenue growth. Well, there you go, right? Those are the numbers right there. You don't need to listen to me. That's coming from the Harvard Business Review. So good. So now hopefully I have all of you sold of, hey, like we do need to get feedback. Now remember, I think 60% of you said that you haven't collected feedback lately, right? In that polling question. And so here's some ideas about how to collect feedback. And we do every single one of them. Okay. We do every single one of them. And the reason I mention that is because you want to meet clients where they're at. And you want feedback to come in different channels. Some clients are going to answer written surveys, but some won't. Some will tell you things face to face, some won't, right? And so we want to be seeking feedback in a number of different channels so that we can, really get our best options there, right? So ask for feedback in the meeting agenda. So our client meeting agendas have a section where we literally ask for feedback. What can we do to improve for you? What would you like us to change? What would you like to see us doing? Okay. Number 2, we're going down here. Post-meeting client surveys. And so when we have a meeting with a client, they get a survey within 24 hours asking for feedback on that meeting. Okay. And by the way, yes, we act on it because I'm reading those survey answers. Number 3, client focus groups. So we actually started that this year or late last year. It actually was a new initiative, and it went great. And so the client focus group is literally me hand picking 6 to 8 people. They came over to my house. I did it twice. I did one at the end of last year and one early this year. They come over to my house and we have a very nice catered dinner and we sit in my dining room, this group of 6 to 8, and we literally just talk. And yes, there are things that I ask them about and there are prompts. I don't just go in there and say, hey, tell me how your life is going, right? But the idea is like truly like a focus group. If you've ever seen like how a focus group works, like on video, is I literally will throw out a service that we've performed or an idea that we've had or something we're doing. And I'll say, tell me your experience with that. Do you like that? What frustrates you? I'll ask them about our newsletter. I'll ask them about tax planning and how that resonates with them. And do they read the tax report? And what does that mean to them? And is there a way we can communicate more efficiently for them with that? And so the focus groups have been wonderful. Okay. Semi-annual client surveys. So those are a little bit lengthier, and we send those out, right? Client advisory boards. So the client advisory board is open. We send out an invitation. And so that's open to basically our A, B, and C clients. I've written a bunch of articles about this. I've done webinars on this. There's all kinds of things you got to think through on it, but we have an agenda. We prepare well for it. And I have a lot of opinions on the client advisory board, better ways to approach it after having done them for literally 20 or 25 years. And so client advisory boards, we also have a women's advisory board. So we have one in the fall that's co-ed, and then we have one actually coming up in about a week and a half, and that is focused on women only. And so if you have a niche or a target market, maybe you have an advisory board connected with your niche or target market. Maybe you have an advisory board or focus group with your centers of influence, right? If you have a bunch of accountants sending you business, why don't you get together a focus group? And so those are some ideas. And then Google reviews, right? We have over 110, I think, Google reviews, and we're really proud of that. And that helps prospects that are researching us to read those reviews. And so here are 6 ways to get feedback. Adding to that is the 90-day survey. And so once somebody is onboarded, we also have a 90-day survey that we send to ask how their onboarding experience is. And so my question to all of you, my challenge is, how are you gathering feedback, right? How are you gathering it formally, and how are you gathering it informally? And so let's see here. So, oh, wow, we got a lot. So yeah, a lot of questions here. Greg, you're answering some of these, I presume, right? Yeah, okay. I have the PDF from Debbie, share with Michael. Curious about implementing this in an ethical way without stealing her work. Oh, that's really nice of you, Lauren. That's really nice. I think, are we referring to the service calendar? And yeah, so Lauren, you can just grab it. Okay. That is what I am here for. Is I'm an open book. Everybody knows me, knows I'm an open book. I am here to like share my intellectual capital with you. That's why Holistiplan pays us the big bucks, right? And so feel comfortable grabbing it, making it your own, updating it to reflect what works for you and what you're doing in your practice, right? Okay. So all right. Okay, I'm going to move on. And Greg, I want to go with anonymous to play devil's advocate. I'm going to get attracted to that. To play devil's advocate, if we're too lazy to do all these things, we're still getting client referrals as the primary source of clients. Is that enough feedback that we're doing a good job? All right, I love that anonymous attendee, right? So I would tell you this: if you're still getting the client referrals as the primary source of clients, right? I I still think it's a nice thank you to reach out and say, hey, thank you for these referrals. Let us know what it is about us that you feel so confident referring clients, because we want to make sure we keep doing it. And so maybe this is a different way of soliciting feedback. Maybe it's part client appreciation, right? That you're getting referrals from these clients. Let's thank them, right? Let's send them a note. Let's send them a small gift. Let's invite them to a dinner, right? A client referral appreciation dinner. That is a thing, right? And let's thank these people. But I do think you need to find out what it is about you that they feel so confident that they're referring you. I do think you need to ask that question just to get that reinforcement. Make sure you keep doing it. And also, I do think it sends a message to these referrers that you care so much that even though they're sending business to you, you still want to be your best. You still want to thank them, and you still want to understand why they're doing it. I think that goes a long way. I think that goes a really long way. So anonymous, tell me what you think. Tell me what you think. All right. No short of good ideas. Where would you recommend starting for a firm with a solo advisor or small ensemble practice, fewer than 50 households? Huh. Well, I like the client advisory board. I like the client advisory board. I think you get good bang for the buck on the client advisory board. So I would do that. I would do that slash client focus group because one of them is sort of a larger, more unwieldy approach than the other. Okay. And so the client focus group allows you to keep a little bit better control because you like handpick who you're inviting. And the client advisory group, again, there's different ways you can approach this, but client advisory group, you're sending out an invite to all of your A and B clients. And so that can be a little unwieldy. You could have, this cranky loyal client that shows up and you got to sort of do some crowd control. Where the client focus group, you can sort of manage that process a little bit more. Good. Okay. Let's continue on here then. Oh, but I didn't see anyone telling me how you're gathering feedback. Um, I didn't see anyone telling us how you gather feedback, right? So I'd love to hear that too. Okay, so here's our key takeaway is understanding client needs is the foundation of every successful growth strategy. How are you listening to your clients, right? How are you listening to your clients? And I think we've given you some nice suggestions. And so hopefully you'll head into this year, maybe taking us up on one or two of these ideas. All right, that was number one, right? So number one of the four things, by the way, I'm a very slow mover today, Greg. We're at half past the hour. I'm still on number one. Okay, so we gotta get moving here. All right, so number two, top growing firms deliver on clients' need through comprehensive planning. Okay, this is a brand new deck that Greg and I created, and clearly my pacing is not doing so well. All right, so client needs through comprehensive planning. So four types of advisors, right? Four types of advisors. Investment planners, case-based, comprehensive, and private wealth. So investment planners is the traditional, right? That's like what we all did 20 or 30 years ago. And by the way, people actually hired us to do that. Okay. People actually hired us, paid us a lot of money. Up, here's the poll. Okay, let's hop in. What type of advisor do you think you are? You're going to get 15 seconds to do this because I need to move through these slides. This is fascinating and entirely consistent with what the data tells us. So we're going to end the poll because it's very clear what's going on here. We're going to share the results. And 86% of you are saying you're comprehensive planners. 86% of you. Okay. And we have some data on this and it's going to be fascinating. Okay. And most of you answered by that. So thank you for hopping on. Okay. Investment planners, that's the stuff we got paid for 30 years ago. And that is, I think, yesterday's approach, right? Case-based, very reactive. The client shows up, says, "Hey, I need help, college planning." You're like, "Oh, I can help you with that," right? So I would tell you that's reactive, okay? Comprehensive, 86% of you out there, you're like, "Yes, that's me," right? Private wealth manager, that's high net worth, and that's going to be a very small sliver. And I get that. All right, let's go to the next slide. They anticipated your answers. These folks that run the data here for us. So this is from Cerulli Associates. And what they said is that 60% of you say that you're comprehensive planners, but only 25% really are. Okay. So of the 86% of you that said you're comprehensive planners, Cerulli is going to say that, no, only about a quarter to a third of you probably really are. Now, look, this is a self-selection group here. And so maybe more than 25% of this group are comprehensive planners, but you're getting the point. There is a huge execution gap. Okay. And basically what Cerulli is telling us is that 61% of us are case-based planners. Those are the reactive folks, right? Those are the reactive folks. And how do we address that? Well, the service calendar, my friend, right? That's the whole point of the service calendar. We're going to get to that. Client demand is reshaping advice. And so on this next slide, if you look here, right, is households want a plan. This to me is even table stakes now, right? And it's just the starting point, right? It's just the starting point of getting to know the goals, the needs, the dreams of these clients, just the starting point. And here's what I would tell you even about these plans, and stop, and you need to take this down. Okay. Greg, are you paying attention? Yes. Okay.
And
Is
answering questions, but I'm paying attention.
excellent. I love that you're paying attention and answering questions. Is, it became like in vogue. I would say about 5 to 10 years ago is, doing a financial plan, doing some basic plan, right? Trying to show value beyond investment management. Unfortunately, those plans are mostly based on accumulation, planning, right? Do I have enough money to retire? And unfortunately, many of your clients or prospects at this point know that they have enough money to retire because they got lucky. They bought NVIDIA, they bought Microsoft, they've been in the stock market, their 401k is through the roof, their real estate's up, their vacation home's higher, their gold's higher, right? Their business is worth more. Everything they own is worth more. I cannot even think of an asset that is worth less today if somebody had a 5 or 10 year holding period. Literally. I mean, I'm sure they're out there, maybe small cap value or something. But for the most part, like your clients are sitting on more wealth. Though they are not so worried about accumulation planning anymore. They're worried about distribution planning. And what is the worry? What's the worry, Greg, with distribution planning?
Taxes, always taxes.
That's right. They can't just take the dollar out of their 401k. They got to pay taxes. They can't just sell their real estate. They got to pay taxes. They can't just sell their business. They got to pay taxes. So what's distribution planning code for? Tax planning, tax minimization. This is your client's problem now, and this is your prospect's problem, and this is your larger prospects. Those folks that are upstream that you're fighting for. This is their problem, not some cash flow. Oh, you have enough to retire. They're like, you didn't need to tell me that. I know that already, right? So let's go to where the puck is going, right? Do you know what sport I'm talking about, Greg, when I say the puck? Do you know what sport?
I think so.
Yeah, good. Hockey. It's hockey, right? Let's go to where the puck is, right? Okay, next slide. Clients are expecting additional services. Again, let's look at this. What are these folks? Um, Okay. What are these folks looking for, right? They are looking for, my screen got dim. They're looking for tax planning. They're looking for wealth transfer advice. They're looking for trust services, estate planning. And yes, they're looking for financial planning and investment management. That's table stakes. But all these other things are tax planning, tax minimization. And guess what? Expectations are high. Why are they looking for this? Because when we go to the next slide, the mountain chart, right? is is you climbing to the top of the mountain, the accumulation phase, that part is easy, right? That part's easy. And if it wasn't easy, even if it was hard, a lot of your clients made it. They did it. They got to the top of the mountain, right? And now it's distribution planning. Now it's climbing down the mountain. Now it's withdrawals. It's RMDs. It's all these new tax laws. It's losing deductions, right? It's the Secure Act. It's the 10-year drawdown period. It's estate planning, legacy planning, right? There's so much going on in the distribution planning phase. And it all begins and ends with taxes. And this is why they need you. I call this curse of the large portfolio. And I actually have like an entire deck on this curse of the large portfolio, because all these assets have gone up so much. And now your clients want to unfreeze them and they're having trouble doing that, right? And that's where the taxes come in. So what is comprehensive planning? 86% of you say that you're doing that, right? What is that? Well, let me tell you, I'm reading this list and I'm getting a headache, because comprehensive planning is a lot of stuff. And are you doing it? Cerulli says you're not, right? Cerulli says you're not, but integrates every aspect of a client's financial life, including investments, tax, retirement, insurance, estate, and legacy, right? Like, are you doing all that? Great. Shifts the advisor's value from managing money to managing outcomes, attaining goals, legacy planning, long-term security, right? You're climbing to the top of that Maslow hierarchy that we've talked about in the past, right? Comprehensive planning is rolling up your sleeves, and really running side by side with the client to address goals, legacy planning, and taxes, and being a life strategist. Okay, and so it's no wonder that Cerulli is saying that most folks are not doing it, because it is a fair amount of work to get that done. Let's go to another data point. This is my favorite. This is CEG Insights. And again, the data is consistent. So here, services desired by wealthy investors, 89% are saying tax planning. If you look at all the data, it's very consistent. 80%, 89, 90%. They want tax planning, right? Services received, 24.8%. You see that in the second column? 24.8% of these same investors say that they're getting the tax planning, right? That's the execution gap, right? That's what Cerulli's also talking about. Yet 85% of advisors say they're providing it. Hey, that's our data. We just did a poll and 86% of us were saying that we're doing this, right? And so part of this is maybe what our definition of comprehensive planning is, which is why I include that definition, right? it is a lot, right? A lot goes into it. It is the tax planning, right? It's reviewing the tax returns. It's Roth conversion analysis. It's distribution planning, right? It's the service calendar where throughout the year we're being proactive and reaching out and helping them with different tax planning items. It's legacy planning. It's estate planning, right? There's a lot that goes into that. And that again is where the service calendar is so powerful because it's a check. It provides transparency, it provides accountability, and it's not reactive, right? It's not reactive. And that's important then because if we poll your clients and you're using a service calendar and you're proactive and you're communicating, then more than 25% of them are going to say that they're getting the services. Right, more than 25%. And so I think that's a real linchpin is the communication and the transparency as to what it means to be a comprehensive planner. And the answer, anonymous attendee, is no. E-money does not equal comprehensive. Okay, e-money does not equal comprehensive. There's more to it, right? E-money is one part of it, but that's my point here, right? E-money is not enough to do all the tax planning and some of the things that we're doing, right? It is a good start. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Firm offering the additional services to meet ideal client needs are often including them in the fee. Now, that's a whole other conversation we could have about how to structure fees. Okay, it's an entirely different conversation. But the point I want to make here is that these firms are doing it, right? 95, 86%, 85%, right? These are all the firms saying that they're offering it. Oh, I love this, Thomas. I love this, right? That's transparency, right? That's transparency. That is you standing for something, right? That is you being the comprehensive planner. And when your clients are asked, they're saying, yeah, my guy's doing that. Right? Because you are transparent with them. I love that, right? See, it doesn't have to look like my service calendar. It doesn't have to look exactly how I do it, right? It just, you got to do something. You got to do something and you got to be transparent with your clients about what you're doing. Okay. What's important here is that all your peers say that they're doing it, and many of them are starting to include it in their fee. And so if you don't do it, somebody else will. Someone else sitting on this Holistiplan call, right? Somebody sitting in my tax workshops. If you don't do it, somebody else will, right? So our next slide is our 3-lane highway. This is how we view the management of wealth, Carson Wealth, Franklin Lakes. And remember, investment management, table stakes, okay? Retirement financial planning, yes. And then family tax planning is what I call that last lane. And that's that comprehensive part because that can mean so many different things. And you see me listing some of them, right? And so that's that comprehensive part. All right. So let's wrap up this chapter, right? Scaling means firms must staff for success. So here's the other thing. I don't expect you to do this all, right? That would be impossible. I can't do my job and Greg's job. Right? There are not enough hours in the day for me to do my job and Greg's job. There's not even enough hours a day for Greg to do Greg's job, right? Is we've got to hire the people to do that. We've got to train them. We've got to have some division of labor. We've got to create specialties, right? So no, Mr. Anonymous attendee, I'm not saying most advisors, stink. I mean, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to make a point. I think that's what you're saying when you say that's about right. And I'm not. The advisors on this call are going to be the best of the breed. They're going to be on this call, but I do want to shake people out of their complacency. Okay, I want you, all of you, including myself, to be better. I want us to be better, right? I want us to be better. And that's really the point. And sometimes I speak in hyperbole to just get people to pay attention and get excited about stuff. All right. So we got to train our staff to do this. And so you see then half of these private wealth managers employ specialized staff, right? You need to be training your staff to do this work. Okay. To do this work. All right. So let's wrap up this section. And what we want to do then is leverage the technology. That's Holistiplan, right? Let's leverage our team. Let's create some transparency around the services we're offering. Let's do that. All right. On to item 3, right? The third thing that top growing firms do. I think I'm making up some time here, Greg. Okay, but you're going to get like 30 seconds for your part. Okay. Top growing firms embrace tax planning. So let's look at this. Tax management has become the core of the high net worth value proposition. I firmly believe this. Okay. My husband is out there sitting in front of prospects that are worth 10, 20, 50, $80 million literally in the last week alone. Okay. And how he's getting differentiated is tax planning. That is how we're getting differentiated. It is the game changer. Okay. And so 73% of clients say it's number one. They also say wealth preservation is number one. Well, what's wealth preservation but making sure that the tax man doesn't eat into your family's wealth? Okay. Taxes, taxes, taxes. And then advisors who deliver on tax planning, guess what? They grow more. Big surprise, right? Big surprise there, right? 97% of top growing firms say that they're doing tax planning and they are growing, right? So the five tax gotchas, and we've reviewed this before, but this is what your prospects are up against, right? These are the key things that your prospects are up against is those large traditional retirement accounts and that Secure Act issue, the 10-year drawdown, right? OBBA and rising taxes in the future. So all the little hurdles with OBBA that Holistiplan helps you to model out. Thank God for Holistiplan, right? And then who knows what taxes are going to be like in the future. That widow's penalty is insidious. Okay. I think it's one of the most evil parts of our tax code. And almost every single one of your clients is going to be dealing with that, driving up their tax rates later on in life. Secure Act, it is not the Secure Act. Okay. It is the Inheritance Tax on Large IRAs Act. That's what that is. And with larger balances and changing laws, estate planning is getting trickier and trickier, right? So five tax gotchas. All right. The difference between inheriting a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA, just quite simply, even if you look at this, if you can set up your clients using Holistiplan, modeling this out, doing Roth conversions, and now your client's children inherit a Roth IRA 2.14 instead of a traditional IRA, look at the difference here. It is $2 million in additional after-tax wealth for your client's children. I mean, don't you think that's going to matter to them, right? And I know it's a simplistic sample, but it just gives you an idea of the power of tax planning. All right. I think this is where Greg starts, right?
I'm butting in, and I'll use my 30 seconds
I
to the
love
fullest.
this, Greg. All right.
So just illustrating some of these tax gotchas, you've seen these before, but they're always worth revisiting. So we have a case of a widow here, and just pointing out that this is all modeled out in Holistiplan. Again, some of these might be more simplistic than reality, but it doesn't matter to us. It proves the point. It proves why we need these systems in order to illustrate these types of points. So in this case, we have a widow. Many of our clients, prospects that we meet with, they're faced with this reality. They're learning this for the first time, learning what the widow's penalty really means, and it really speaks volumes to them because of how impactful it can be. So in our situation here, we have our 2025 joint filers and our 2026, widow filing projection. So our IRA distribution comes down a little bit. The wife in this case is 79 years old, just a year younger than her deceased husband. And they have a $4.5 million IRA. So our IRA distributions, for all intents and purposes, stay similar, come down a little bit. She's going to take over his Social Security benefits, so she's getting 50,000. And really, the meat here, and we've done other versions of this, which I think are also impactful, showing how some of the enhanced senior deductions can be phased out because of the widow's penalty, because they're now subject to that single filer. Those single filer phase out ranges rather than the joint filers, so they'll lose some of those OBBA deductions. But the point being, we're going from a 24% marginal bracket to a 32% marginal bracket. Taxes are increased by almost $6,000, and with less cash flow, with less income. So that's the impact of the widow's penalty. And I projected it out, just with moderate growth, just to see what this looks like in 2030 as well. And we're actually getting bumped up into the 35% bracket, as many of you may know, or are familiar with the brackets. That 35% bracket is basically half of the bracket range for single filers. So very quickly they get into that 35% range. This perfectly illustrates that 12 to 13% increase in marginal tax rate that we quote for our widowed clients, and just in a couple of years, their effective taxes that they're paying are almost double what they were just a few years prior. So that just speaks to what some of these impacts are, what clients are facing, and how you need the software to be able to illustrate these things to clients. So jumping back into our deck here, we're going to use effective tax planning strategies. So, maybe for a widowed client in that situation, maybe we can squeeze out some Roth conversions in the next couple of years. Certainly use that last year married filing joint to maximize a Roth conversion. We did that for this for one of our higher net worth clients in 2025. We're able to get close to $600,000 converted at a lower tax rate than they would be paying the preceding year in 2026 without a Roth conversion. So they were thrilled with that. They loved that. It's going to save them taxes over their lifetime. So Roth conversion windows, taking advantage of that income valley if it's there for you. Tax loss and tax gain harvesting. So if they're in that 0% capital gain bracket, maybe there's an opportunity to realize some gains and reset the basis across the portfolio. Tax losses, we know why we do that. So take advantage of those if they're available. Asset location, tax efficiency, and portfolio construction. These are areas where maybe others would overlook. Especially clients coming in, they have their 401k that's been 100% equities their entire life, and just helping to educate them. Maybe now's the time to tamp down the growth in the tax deferred accounts. Let's get the growth where we can more tax efficiently realize it. Charitable tax strategies, QCDs, donor advised funds, appreciated asset giving. These are all great strategies. Bracket management and multi-year planning. When we make recommendations to clients, we want them to know that this is step one of 10, step one of 15. So this is going to be something we're going to do for you every single year. We're going to model it out in Holistiplan every single year for every client. That way they know, this is not just something we set up 10 years ago and we're blindly following the plan we established then. Tax laws change, tax situations change. It's why we need, Holistiplan for every client every year. So we use tax-aware planning across the whole financial picture, coordinating the investments, retirement income, estate decisions through that tax lens, as we've seen throughout this presentation. We've got our key groups that are impacted by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act here. And what's interesting as I was putting this together, I was trying to think of who is a person that doesn't fall into these key groups impacted, which I think just sort of proves that point that everybody is impacted. I'll go with individuals. I guess working clients, they might not have a family. They could just be a working client. But in any case, how are they impacted? What are we doing? We're leveraging those income reduction opportunities. Maybe it's no tip or overtime pay, that provision of the bill. Maximizing their retirement savings, managing their MAGI so that they can take advantage of some of these new benefits. For seniors, making sure they get that senior deduction, reviewing the RMD strategy via Secure Act, and then of course, considering strategies to help reduce those future RMDs. Maybe it's QCDs when they turn 70, if they're charitably inclined. Just thinking proactively about these things. Business owners, there's a whole host of things that come about for business owners under OBBBA. Some of it's continuation from TCJA. Some of it's new, but there's a ton there. In many cases, that should really be something that you're taking, to your client and saying, we need to sit in front of your CPA and discuss these things. But there's a lot of opportunity there for high income earners, small business owners, QBI deduction, depreciation options. So take that to their CPA and figure out what makes the most sense. And of course, high net worth individuals, optimizing that long-term planning, making sure that they can qualify for SALT if that's a possibility, but of course, maximize those Roth conversion strategies and take advantage of these estate tax exemption limits at the federal level while they're here. Of course, don't forget the states. I think it's something like 23 states have estate taxes of their own, so keeping that in mind, even if clients aren't at that 15 or $30 million range for families. Tax-aware portfolio management, it truly is a part of tax planning. As Debbie says, most of what we are finding in our prospecting work is that setting ourselves apart from a tax perspective is really what's winning over clients. They can talk to anybody about investments. Many of them have been extremely successful with investing on their own, but it's the tax piece that makes the difference, and many investors feel that that is the case. So key planning takeaway, being that central hub, tax planning is that central hub. It's essential for all clients. Like I said, we're doing this from an enterprise level, which we're going to get into a little bit in the next section. But in the interest of time, just keeping tax planning in mind in all of those areas of planning, because it truly does touch all of those areas of planning. So section 4, top growing firms provide tax planning to all clients every year. So this is not just a one-time thing. And we've certainly found it to be the case. Every year we find new ways to use Holistiplan to help our, what we would call an enterprise approach to our tax planning initiative. So, it's not just the case that we need to open up a client's tax return, look through and see where there might be tax inefficiency. Now what we can do is run across our entire book and see, where are those tax inefficiencies presenting themselves. Tax planning is a necessity for the whole client book every single year. So let's take a look at what that looks like. It could be household dashboards. These are some of the tools that we're using to make this process easier for us and still provide the same quality of service to clients. So custom tax dashboards, which we'll take a look at, we've talked about in the past, but those are they've become a greater part of our process through the years. Schedule B report, if you're looking to identify those outside assets that are not managed, can be hugely impactful. Tax returns staging for actually collecting the tax return from the clients. And there really is so much more. So Holistiplan, it does need to be an integral part of your service offering to all clients. You don't want to be doing things two different ways. You use Holistiplan for this client, this other client, maybe not so much. We'll just take a look at their tax return. No, throw that system out of out the window. Get everybody in Holistiplan. Everything is in one place. You can do planning from an enterprise level. So dashboards, this is sort of the household dashboard. This is what you see when you click on households at the top of the page here. Many of you are Holistiplan users, so you're probably familiar with this. But there's so many of these fields that can be useful for at a glance information. So if we're reviewing our list of prior year Roth conversion recommendations, we have a pretty good sense that we're probably going to recommend Roth conversions again. Well, maybe we're coming to this household dashboard. We'll look at the age field. We'll look at state-specific outreach opportunities if there's some sort of local tax planning consideration. Maybe we'll look at carry forward losses, make sure that we're utilizing those losses in the current year, not letting them go by, particularly in New Jersey, because in any case, we want to make sure we're using losses in the current year in New Jersey. So that's a whole other thing, but the tools that Holistiplan provides allow you to do that enterprise level planning for clients. Schedule B summary, this is what I was referencing before. It's going to show you all of your clients' outside accounts, interest, dividend paying accounts, accounts that maybe you don't have under your management. So great way to identify those. And of course, reach out to the client. We found the clients are very receptive. They appreciate the outreach. Maybe it's an account they forgot about. They set aside for, a wedding that's not happening, a home purchase that's not happening. So, use this to your advantage. It runs it across the entire client book. Using the tax reports to simplify those tax planning conversations. Again, we sit down with our clients. I love bringing out the tax report. The graphics for marginal brackets and ordinary income, capital gain income, makes it a much easier conversation when we're trying to discuss things like Roth conversions, realizing proactive capital gains, something like that. So clients love these reports. They love to go through them with us. They always find things, there's always questions that they ask, and we're able to answer them clearly because we have this report. So a bit more, on the tax report. Again, many of you have probably seen this, but are you sending them to every client? Are you taking advantage of this software in order to really provide this value to clients? Custom tax reports, this is something that we use for our enterprise level planning. So if we want to do an initiative that just looks at, maybe asset shifting, we want to put, all the high gain assets to the older spouse because perhaps they're, ill and there's a chance that there could be a potential step up in basis. So we'll use, we'll create a report specific to that that's going to show their ages, help us identify those clients that could use an outreach in that area. But the list goes on. Carry forward loss, where are clients at for their MAGI? What are the, maybe a Roth conversion candidate specific one, business owner reports so that we know who we should be sending proactive outreach to make recommendations for business planning or take a deeper look at. Itemized versus standard deduction. This one I think is very impactful, especially for high income tax states where now many of those clients are now going to be itemizing. Perhaps they were taking the standard deduction in the past. So these are really intuitive. We have, there's anywhere from, I think it's about 60 specific fields that you can populate into any one of these separate reports. So you can take out whatever you want, you can add whatever you want. And it can all be exported to Excel. So if you want to manipulate the data afterward, but this is so hugely impactful. It saves you time, and it still allows you to provide clients with that, with that same level of tax planning expertise and insight. So we have 12 primary review points that we like to address for our tax reports. And what we do is really identify, what we can address with each of these. So carry forward losses, easy. Let's create a custom report for that. See who has carry forward losses in the prior year, and make sure we're making that recommendation. Qualified business income, again, did they have it last year? Or if we know they're a business owner and they're not showing up on this list, why is that? Let's figure that out. So Roth conversion opportunities, we're doing that constantly. So a couple of things, just to point out here, and maybe some ideas for some of those reports for yourself. And of course, we have our sample service calendar here. And with that, Debbie, I think I'll hand it back to you. I know many people were asking for a copy of the service calendar in the chat. I don't know that we had included it with the materials, but I let them know, we're happy to send this to Alana. She can get it out to the group.
That's great. Greg, you actually made up a lot of time for us. That was amazing. Here we are coming in. We got 3 minutes left. It's brilliant, Greg. Okay, so yeah, so here's the service calendar, and this ties in very nicely with Kyle's question, right? Debbie, what is your pitch to prospects on tax planning to land them? Is it generic, um, custom tailored to a situation? What does it sound like, right? And so, yes, we're going to include the service calendar, so don't worry about that. Okay. And I think this is a great way for us to tie up this webinar, right? So when I go in to sit with a prospect, we call it a discovery meeting, and we have like a special discovery agenda. But basically, I'm there to learn all about them and what their pain points are, right? That's the bottom line. I will literally spend the first 20, 30, 40 minutes listening to their life, what's going on, what's important to them, what keeps them up at night. Okay. And inevitably, then we're going to discover tax planning issues if these people have any type of money. It's going to be, oh, I have this large IRA. I don't know how to draw it down. I have this large 401k, and somebody told me that there's these like big RMDs. I don't know anything about that. Oh, I want to make sure I get my IRA to my children, and I have like 3 children, and 2 of them are very successful and high tax rates. Okay. I want to make sure that my wife is taken care of when something happens to me. I have this special needs child. Oh, well, yeah, I haven't looked at my will in 10 years, right? So as part of that conversation, you're going to identify all of these things connected with tax planning. Okay. Oh, I have all of this meta stock. I have like $3 million in meta stock, but I'm afraid to touch it, right? Because what am I going to do? Oh, yeah. And I have this rental property and I don't think I can sell it because I think it's gone up so much in value, right? Like that is part of the conversation. You learn all of that. And then you sit down and you go to that 3-lane highway. Okay. And that 3-lane highway that we showed you earlier, I don't know, Greg, it's too much trouble to go back to that quickly. I don't know. But that 3-lane highway, and basically then what I do is I take all of their concerns and then I start putting them into the different categories of the 3-lane highway. And I say, oh, you talked about you're worried about volatility in the market. Okay, that's investment management. And I'll talk to them about the things they were concerned with investment management. Then I'm like, oh, you're worried about outliving your money. That's financial planning. And I talk to them about how we help. And then all the things I just mentioned to you there in connection with tax planning, that goes in this last lane. I call it the lonely lane because it's family tax planning and nobody's doing it. They say they're doing it, but they're not, right? And that goes back to the Cerulli data, is that people are out there saying they do this, but they don't. Nobody does this the way we do this, right? So now I totally have their attention. And they're like, well, how do we know that you do this, right? Again, they're not saying that, but that's what they're thinking. And so then I go from the 3-lane highway forward to the service calendar. Okay. Sorry, Greg. And so now we go all the way to the service calendar. And I'm like, you know how we do this? Because, I have this service calendar. And here is what we do in what season is it now? The winter. Here's what we do in the winter. Oh, there we go. Here's what we do in the spring. Oh, see here, I'm reviewing your Roth conversions. Oh, see here, I'm reviewing your benefit plans. Oh, see here, I'm helping you with your estate planning and your legacy planning. Oh, and year-end tax planning, right? And so then I show them the service calendar. And now these people know that I actually put my money where my mouth is. And so I will tell you, if I have 2 pieces to go into every prospect meeting, meeting with. I could only bring 2 pieces of paper. You go, Debbie, you could only bring 2 pieces of paper, right? My desert island papers is what I call them, right? It is going to be the service calendar, what you see right there, and the 3-lane highway of what you saw earlier. Those are the 2 pieces, and those 2 pieces helped me to close $100 million in net new assets last year. Okay. And my husband, I got to give him a little credit. Okay. I'll give Greg some credit too. He helped. Okay. So that's what I tell you. And that's how it works. And by the way, then it's not completely generic because I'm not like, oh, yeah, we help with tax planning. Right. But it's not like, oh, I'm like reviewing their tax return and I'm doing all this tax analysis. It's me listening to them, hearing what they're concerned about, and then talking them through the 3-lane highway and talking them through the service calendar and where their needs, sort of tie in with the services that we're offering. Okay. And so with that, then we've got like 2 slides left, right? Here's the annual service calendar, right? There's the annual service calendar. Here's the quarterly service roadmap. Again, these are just all different ways for you to provide visibility. And it's like your service promise, right? It's your service promise. Okay. And then the key takeaway, right? Every client, every year, right? That is what Holistiplan helps us to do, right? Is helps us to scale up, gives us enterprise management tools, helps us to be efficient so we can do this wonderful work. And then we've got bonus material, but I think the big takeaway bonus material is the service calendar, right? And with that, then fortune favors the bold. I love this slide. Let's take a look at this. I don't know if you saw, but that free solo guy, Alex or whatever, climbed that like building in Tokyo or Singapore. Was that absolutely nuts? Okay, his brain is different. I don't know if you saw that. His brain, what's in his cortexes is different than normal people. Anyway, he said he would have done it for free. He's obviously a horrible negotiator because you never tell on national TV that you do something for free. If I was negotiating for him, I would have gotten him like $2 or $3 million. No joke. He clearly is the wrong negotiator. And with that, back to you, Alana.
Amazing. I love it. Thank you both so much. This was awesome. I'm not even an advisor and I'm frantically taking notes in these sessions. You guys are amazing. There were a couple of things that I just want to touch on before we go super quick. I know we're over time, so if you need to drop, please do that. There were a couple of questions that I saw come through the chat about like, how do I talk to my clients about this if they've never received tax planning before, if an advisor has never asked for their tax return before? If you are a Holistiplan user, you have access to what is called the marketing toolkit, which is a kind of a suite of client-facing materials that you can use to make these conversations easier. A lot of those resources are actually created by Debbie and her team. So if you were a fan of this, you're going to be a fan of the marketing toolkit. There's one specific kind of client-facing one-pager. We call it Why Tax Planning Matters. I will send that in our follow-up email so you can get a sense of kind of what is in that marketing toolkit. I also saw a couple of questions about like, how do I do this without saying that I offer tax advice? Very timely question. We actually have a webinar coming up next week on the 10th with Stephen Jarvis, where he is diving into exactly what is the difference between tax planning and tax advice and how do you do that. So I'm actually going to drop the link to register for that session in the chat. So if you want to join us for that, you are welcome to do that. That is everything I have. Greg, Debbie, thank you so, so much. This was awesome. Thank you to all 300 and some odd of you who stayed on this whole time. I appreciate you guys making time for us. With that, we'll see you guys later.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.